Alright, so to start us off, I want to take you guys on a little ride. So, when you get your next big idea, say sparkly ketchup. Grandma's toast. Alright, so we are on a. Yes, we are on a roller coaster, right? We're starting off. All of a sudden, it's falling. As it goes, that's right, we're getting good, we're getting that excitement, we're that build up until we reach the top. On, and we're ready for that big at the end. So then, as your roller coaster comes to an end, you're feeling relieved, maybe you feel mad about it. So, when we are thinking about how the story develops and the plot of our story, you can think of it a lot like a roller coaster. Okay? So, what is the plot? All stories have characters, all stories have a plot. The plot is just what happens in the story. The plot is more than just the sequence of events. So when you're thinking of the plot, you're thinking of more than just today was a normal Monday. I woke up at 7. I went to school. I went to my piano lesson after school. We ate spaghetti and meatballs for supper. I did my homework. I went to bed. So that's not just the plot of your story. The plot is the way that the author creates a chain of connected events that make up a story. So Kyle, Ben, and Lewis are walking home from school. They enter a convenience store. Kyle tells Lewis to put a candy bar in his pocket. Lewis refuses to shoplift. He leaves the store. A few days later, Kyle and Ben are caught shoplifting. Lewis knows he did the right thing. So that would be your sequence, your chain of connected events that make up your story. So a plot follows a 5-part pattern, just like when you're riding on the roller coaster. You have the exposition, the rising action, your climax at the top, the falling action, and the resolution. So let's take a look at those. The exposition, right? You're just getting on, you're ready to ride. It is the beginning of your story. The main character and the settings are introduced, and it often includes hints about what that main conflict will be in the story. So it would just be your line at the beginning, right? You're just getting to know what the story is going to be about. So here is the author that wrote the story about Lewis. In the exposition part of my story, I introduce the readers to Lewis, Kyle, and Ben. They would be your story. Your characters of the story. Presented Lewis as the main character. Kyle is presented as the bossy one in the group. And Ben is the sidekick who always does what Kyle says. The three boys are walking home from school. So let's take a check. Did we meet the main character? Who is the main character? Do we know the setting where it's taking place? We do. Where is it taking place? Yeah, right now they're walking home from school. And are there any hints about an upcoming conflict? Any ideas yet? So, do we get any details about a character that might help with it.
Yeah, they say Kyle's the boss.
Right, he's bossy. Do you think that that might lead to a conflict with his friends later? Yes, very well could. So now we just learned about our setting and our characters. We're moving on to our rising action. Our rising action is the largest part of the story. The main character's problem is revealed through a series of events. The story becomes more complicated and tension is rising for both the main character and the reader. So your rising action right here, climbing to the top. You're getting all those more details and the events that are happening in the story to really help that tension rise. So in the rising action part of my story, Kyle decides he is hungry. He wants a candy bar, but he does not want to pay for it. He tells Ben and Lewis to walk into the convenience store with him and orders each boy to slide a candy bar into a pocket. When Lewis says that it's a bad idea, Kyle and Ben begin to tease him. Lewis reluctantly follows the boys into the store. So, what are some of the rising action things that are happening right now in the story? Yeah, they're walking in the store. What else happened before they walked in? Bentley?
They were like teasing Lewis because he didn't like
Right, they're teasing him. And they're teasing him. Once inside, Kyle and Ben successfully slide a candy bar into the pocket without being noticed. Kyle tells Lewis to hurry up. Lewis's heart is pounding and his hands are shaking. Is there a series of events that reveals the problem so far? That are happening. Yep. Is the tension rising? Can you feel the tension between the characters? What tells you? What examples can you say from the story? His hands are shaking. You can tell there's tension there, right? He's getting nervous. Near the end of the section is the character preparing to face the conflict. He's to face the conflict. Right. Let's see. Now, we've climbed our rising action, right? We've gotten our details. We know this series of events that just happened in our story. We're reaching the top, the climax. It's the most important part of the story for the main character. A major event occurs where the main character must face the source of conflict. It can be the turning point of the story. Lewis feels stuck in a no-win situation. He knows stealing is wrong, and if he gets caught, there will be major consequences. However, if he doesn't follow Kyle's orders, Kyle will be mad and might even start bullying him. Lewis tells Kyle that he's not doing it, and he exits the store. So, is this the most intense part of the story? You don't think so? Do you think that Lewis was facing some kind of conflict, the source of the conflict? Right. So if you say facing the source of the conflict, it would be a conflict with Kyle, right? Wouldn't that be our intense part? Yeah. So is this likely the turning point of the story? I believe it is. So now let's go to our falling action. The falling action is when the tension settles and the story begins to move toward an ending. We start to see the results of the main character's actions and how these actions will protect himself and others. Kyle and Ben follow Lewis out of the store and begin to tease Lewis, chickening out. He heads off in a different direction. He realizes that Kyle and Ben are not the type of friends he wants to have. For the next few days, Lewis waits until Kyle and Ben are gone, and then walks home from school with a classmate that he does not know well. So, is the problem being solved or beginning to be solved? It's beginning to be solved. Yeah. What would tell you that? Right. Yeah. He's making a different choice than them. Right. He's moving on from the problem. Is the tension beginning to settle? Is beginning to settle. And is the story moving toward ending? I believe it is. So now we're moving on to our resolution for our story. It is the conclusion of the story. Any remaining issues are wrapped up, and the story usually ends in a way that is satisfying to the reader. So, in this story, Lewis realizes that he has a lot in common with Mateo, and they become friends. One day, Lewis sees a police car outside the convenience store, and later hears that Ben and Kyle were caught shoplifting. Lewis is pleased that he did the right thing. So, did the story end? Are the issues and conflicts wrapped up? How are they wrapped up? Right, and that wrapped up our right, yes. And are we satisfied with that ending? We are. All of our conflicts are resolved. All of our characters have maybe gotten what they deserved. Right. So when you're thinking about your plot of your story that you're reading, think about it as your roller coaster, your exposition, your characters, your setting, your starting line, yes, your rising actions, that sequence, right? The events that are happening. Your climax, which is that turning point, that major event that happened. Your falling actions, what came from that turning point. And your resolutions, how was it all solved and resolved? So let's go over some of these terms. What is the most intense part of the story? Yes. The conflict is fully revealed and the story becomes more complicated in what follows. Rising actions. The story ends, usually in a way that is satisfying to the reader. Yes, the resolution. This is often the turning point of the story. Like, climax is the turning point. Characters and setting are introduced. Exposition, yes. The tension begins to settle, and we see the results of the main character's actions. Following actions, yes. This is usually the largest part of the story. Authors spend a lot of time writing about the events that are part of this part. So, the rising action, yes, it gave it right to you. So sometimes in stories, they may have more than one rising and falling, right? They may have more than one climax of the story. So sometimes Your roller coaster might look more like this. So let's go ahead and try to pick out the parts of the plot in this story. So I'll read it to you guys. Miss Muffet was hungry. She had been up for hours cleaning because visitors would be coming to her apartment that evening. It was almost noon when she realized that she hadn't taken the time to eat breakfast yet. Miss Muffet prepared her favorite breakfast, curds and whey. She looked out the window and saw that it looked beautiful outside. She decided to enjoy her breakfast on the balcony. Miss Muffet sat down on her tuffet and began eating her curds and whey. Suddenly, she saw a spider crawl across the balcony floor and stop right next to her tuffet. She screamed, jumped up, and ran into her apartment, leaving her curds and whey behind on the balcony. Miss Muffet calmed herself down, poured herself a bowl of cereal, and finished her breakfast at the kitchen table. When she finished, she picked up her phone and called her friend. Jack, she said when he answered, do you know a good exterminator who can spray my balcony for spiders? While I was eating breakfast this morning, one came right up beside me and nearly scared me to death. I don't think you should get an exterminator. That spider you saw posed no danger to you. In fact, spiders help humans. They eat flies, remember? Besides, the spider was outside, Jack reminded her. You are absolutely right, Jack. I won't call an exterminator. Thank you for your help, said Miss Muffet. So, from our Miss Muffet story, what was the exposition of it? What did it tell us? So, who was the characters of the story? Miss Muffet. And where did that story take place? Yes, they just changed a little what nursery rhyme that you guys might remember. They made it into a story. So yeah, it took place out on her balcony, right? What were some of our rising actions? Some things that the sequence that happened. Right, she was making her breakfast. Right, she was cleaning that morning. She got behind, right? Cleaning for people to come. She made her breakfast and she went outside to eat it. And when she got outside, that is our turning point. What happened? The climax of the story is she saw a spider. Yes. What happened after she saw the spider? She ran inside. And then our falling actions, right? Parts that are taking us back down from the excitement of seeing spider. She did what? She called her friend. And what were his suggestions to her? Right. So our resolution to our story would be, what did she decide, Sophia? Right. She wasn't going to kill that poor little spider that was outside because he is helpful, right? So she decided to go back in and just leave him be. Okay. Good job. So when you are reading stories, think about those roller coasters, right? Ups and downs, those turning points, and how they're being solved. Maybe even some stories will take you upside down. It just depends, right? One, right? Think about movies that you watch, right? When you're watching No, no, no. Right? All right. So you're like, whatever you do. Right? Climax action, right? Dude, what a die. All right, thank you guys.